The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Wholeness means to me being in a state of joy.
Wholeness means feeling complete, owning my authentic gifts.
Wholeness is really connected. Everything is connected to everything.
Wholeness is where we have access to all parts of ourselves.
Hey, it's Shalene. I just wanted to pop on really quick before the podcast starts and let you know something that's going to be happening at the end of the podcast. Michelle and I have a favorite astrologer. Her name is Karen Crawford, and she's been on the podcast before. And we asked her if she'd be willing to share some astrological projections or predictions of each month as we go along in 2025. And she agreed. And Michelle and I are ecstatic. We're so excited. It's a huge gift to us. So I'm not sure if it's always going to be at the end or if it's sometimes going to be at the beginning or at the end. I don't know, but stay tuned. Like I said, the first podcast of every month will be including the astrological projection of the month ahead. This month, she included also kind of wrapping up 2024, what that had in store for us, and then what's going to kind of happen in 2025. I really trust Karen. She has spent many, 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 many hours learning and studying and knowing what she's talking about. And we couldn't be more thrilled to have her as part of the Wholeness Network. Thanks.
I'll do a card. So I used the Raise Your Vibration Oracle by Kyle Gray. And the one I got, which was really cool. I am supported on my path. Ooh. And it really relates to what we're going to be talking about today, which you never question.
That's right.
Of the cards, okay? So the road you are on may feel like the road less traveled, but this journey is going to be highly beneficial for your personal and spiritual growth. With this card, you're being encouraged to see how far you've come, what you have healed, and what you have overcome. The universe is also encouraging you to keep things simple. If things become heavy or challenging, ask yourself, what can you do to lighten your load? What can you let go? What can you do that will allow you to walk in your path in a lighter, more fulfilled and focused way? Your path may feel like a lonely road, but the truth is you are infinitely connected, and it is the path you have chosen. It is important for you to fully own that. Through accepting who you are and what you are here to do, you'll create an energy that will allow others to accept you and support you. You don't need external validation, but you do deserve to feel respected, supported, and encouraged. Let that happen. And the vibe of the day is I trust in my ever unfolding path. And this will come in as we talk about the book today, I think.
I think so too. You're right. So The Big Leap. I think I read. I read it 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Yeah, about January, February of 2022, I believe. It feels like it was just not that long ago, but that's when it was. And I think what's interesting about The Big Leap, I was taking a class and we were asked to read the book as part of the class. Okay. And I think it reminds me, so the first thing that I noticed about the book is the cover, the cover, which we will have a picture of, is like two fish, a fish jumping out of a fish into another bowl, a fish bowl. And it just always reminds me of that quote or, that story. Yes, there we go. Yep, there we go.
I don't know if you can see this, but.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
So have you heard that quote? I mean, you've heard it a million times probably, but there's a story. It's a tale about two fish swimming along one day when they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way. And the older fish nods at them and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" Have you heard this before?
Something similar.
Okay. And the two young fish swim on for a bit. Eventually, one of them turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" And I think that is what this book is about. It was like, I mean, I have vivid pictures of where I was on a walk or where I was when like listening to the book and being like, oh, like it's familiar, it resonates. And yet, it's new. It's totally new. You know what I mean? It's a totally new way of thinking, of being.
That is
Of,
so fascinating because I had like a very opposite experience the first
did
time I
you?
read it. Well, the
Okay.
first time it completely went over my head. And I remember listening to it. Like I remember bits and pieces, I remember a story about a granddaughter in the pool. And like there were certain things that I kind of remembered, but the book didn't like I kept trying to see like what did Michelle love about this book? Like I'm not getting it. And I guess I just need to know myself. Like I remember sixth grade, I took French and completely failed it. Like it made no sense. And then I took it again the next year and aced it. Like it just made sense. So I just need to know myself and know that sometimes I just have to repeat things to make it
Mm.
make sense. So I offer that to our listeners. If you read it for the first time and you're like, I don't know what they're talking about, like give it a second chance. Take a break and then have a second chance.
Well, I think that like might be like exactly what we were talking about, where we're going to talk about, especially I want to talk about it when we talk about the woo portion of this book,
Hmm.
is the idea that you resonate the frequency you're in is the resonance, and so you were probably in another frequency doing other things, and it just didn't line up. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and that's how it works. Like, and it's not like it's wrong. It's just it doesn't it's like you're like I don't even know what you're saying, like the words don't even make sense sometimes because you're
Yeah,
just in a
exactly.
different frequency. Yeah, and so that's very woo of you to just be in a different frequency. That's it. And then this time you kind of moved into it and understood it a little more. I'm assuming you liked it better this time.
Oh, yeah. I've been telling everybody about it. It's all I can talk about. And
I
I see it everywhere. And it's
know.
hard for me to just kind of like button my lips sometimes when I see people do things or um I was telling Michelle recently, I have a friend who I just barely met and she was telling me about some of the things her husband did and she was like upper limit problem and I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say, but you can't just come out and tell somebody that, you know?"
Right, 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 right. So the book's called The Big Leap. And what do you think is meant by the big leap? Because he doesn't say that too much in the book. It's like the leap is not really mentioned as much as, like you say, an upper limit. So what do you think that big leap, why do you think he called it that?
That's a really good question because even sometimes like the cover of the book, I don't know if you have this experience, but like when I read Twilight, I remember looking at the cover of the book, I'm like, okay, this has nothing to do with the book. And then later on, there was like a symbol in the book, right? That I think, do you
Mhm.
remember? That was a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
But
Do
so
we
it
want to
was,
admit? Do we want to admit we were one of those wives? No, I'm just kidding.
we were. Um, and so I sometimes discount the cover of the book, or I don't really ever think about it until I'm done with the book, and then I look at it and it makes sense. So, um, I guess when I think of the big leap is looking at some of these principles that he's talking about, and if you can live by those principles, it's almost like you said before, like you're moving into a different frequency, you're moving into a different way of life. So I guess that's what I think of when the big leap is. And it's interesting that the fish is going from just a bigger thing of water. It's not like he's changing into oil or he's going into the river.
Too.
He's just expanding, to the next level. It's not,
Right.
I don't know, it's not, it is life changing, but it's
Mhm.
not so life changing that it's detrimental.
Right. And I thought the word big is kind in a way because it's like saying this is, like it's okay if this is big. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's a small journey. It's a big deal to kind of move into some of these ways of thinking, don't you think?
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it is big. Yeah, when you
Yeah.
start to see some of the principles in real life,
Yes.
you can see
So
the big difference it makes.
yeah, totally. Okay, so how would you describe, so at the beginning he talks about this upper limit, and we've kind of mentioned it a couple times. So how would you define an upper limit?
So I think I was trying to tell my husband actually about this, about the upper limit, and I said it's kind of like you've got this program going in your brain, and I said I think a lot of times it's given to you by generational things that have been done or environmental things, but it's this idea that when people get to too high of a level, it makes them bad. Or so, for example, I say like you've seen families like in a poverty cycle sometimes because it's like they may have a belief that rich people suck.
Hmm.
And so they're like, well, I don't want to ever get to that point because if I do, then I suck too, and I don't want to suck. So I will keep myself under this certain amount of money that I earn so that I will stay good or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know there's bigger ways to do it or better ways to describe it than just money, but
Mm-hmm. That's a
I
good
think
way.
that's kind of universal for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes the I think the beliefs, that's the thing is like you're like, well, I don't believe that. And you think, or like, I do want to be rich. And, if you talk about money, like it's like, I do want to be rich. Are you kidding me? I don't want to be poor. And so it's sometimes it's like there's no way, but it's on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And he describes it in that way of like, what can you, it's like literally, can you hold that expression? Do you fit in that vibration? Or is it like, and if it doesn't resonate, you're not going to stay there. You're going to go back to that comfort zone. I'll tell you an example from that I thought of, that came up the second time that I wrote the book. So when
Read the book.
I mean, yeah, what did I say?
Okay.
Write it?
Right. Yeah. You probably could have written it. I believe that.
I wish. That's funny. Um, but so this time listening to the book, I've listened to it to be honest, but because I love it. And his voice, he reads it. So it's like you kind of have this buddy, this little friend. And depending on different authors, I'll speed it up, but him, I didn't have to speed up, I could listen to him. But one thing that was kind of big for me was, and it was just kind of a story he told that I was like, oh, I know what he's talking about. So for me, my mom, I'm the youngest of 7 children, and she was pregnant with number 7 and had a late term miscarriage, a difficult late term miscarriage, and it was devastating to her. And we could even go into she was living, her doctor was like her husband was the dean of the medical institute at the university they were at. And um she just says it was so weird after she had this miscarriage. She had to, she had to deliver it, she had to go to the hospital and deliver this little 5-month-old baby. And she never saw it again. Like they didn't even give her the opportunity. And so I imagine her in this deep grief. Um, what do I do with myself? I've got 6 kids, and who am I kind of things, I've been there, you've been there. So she decided to go back to school. And she walked by the science department and she saw these fetuses in jars, and she felt like one of them was hers. She felt like one of them was hers. Like, and then a little bit later, as she's going up and down the stairs, she starts to get tired and not feeling good. And turns out she's pregnant with me.
Hmm.
And the same doctor, her OB was like, you've got to have an abortion. Like this is a Down syndrome baby. You're going to have a Down. Somehow got her convinced that she was going to have a baby with Down syndrome. And so she had to make this decision. My dad was finishing up some extra schooling anyway. So we ended up, the family moved states because I've got to go back home with my people and I figure this out. So the whole time she was with me, pregnant with me, she was preparing for a Down syndrome baby, how she would take care of it, what she would do, how she would react. She would write letters, like I have there's some letters. It was like, I'll love you no matter what, da 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 da. And all these things to come to terms with this. I'm a Down syndrome baby. And
Well, when you have a Down syndrome baby, especially that many years ago,
yeah,
you were preparing for the rest of your life. You were going to have this
right,
the rest of your life. So that was a big life change for her.
right. And it was still kind of like some people, gave them up for adoption or put them in homes.
Mhm.
They weren't, they were, if you kept the baby, you were like both a saint and weird at the same time, a little bit. So when I was born, it was kind of like, what? Like she was not expecting this. And and was has even, she said it was just so strange. Like I was like, what do I do with this, all this preparation? It turns out years later when I was, preteen, maybe 10, 11, 12, she actually worked with this group of well, it was like everybody that had special needs, it was like a special needs little group. And at church, it was like they had their own little thing. They'd go sing, and she got to write plays for them, and she loved it. Like she loved it. But I realized listening to this book, I thought, I think deep inside some of my DNA was like, probably shouldn't, there was that feeling of I probably shouldn't, I'm not probably, I've got some issues. I shouldn't, probably can't do that. You know what I mean? Like really, really deep inside, like it wasn't like it was on the surface, but I could just be like, yeah, that would disrupt me. That would have caused for my mom to be carrying me all those times, thinking I was not going to be able to achieve much, trying to be grateful for just what I could do, not expect anything more. That had to have, penetrated my soul in some ways about the expectation I could have for myself, or the capacity or the abilities I would have. She felt like I would have limited abilities my whole life. And I thought, So I sat with that a minute, and kind of worked on that. I mean, sometimes just feeling, it's almost like shifts can happen, even just in that awareness, you're like, oh my gosh, I recognize that. And Gay talks about that too, with his dad died when mom was pregnant with him, and how that, really kind of affected him. He was not a happy, he wasn't really celebrated so much by his mom. And I like how he doesn't talk about, it's not about this.
He doesn't blame his mom.
Right, exactly.
There's never any blame. It's just what happened.
Right. It's just what happened. And I think that's, to me, in this book, I liked that, because he didn't go into, well, you're a problem. What do you got? Like, figure out your problems. It's you, all this stuff. It's like he tells this kind of story and uses his own examples. And like I say, I'm interested if in another few months, if I listen to it again, if other things will unpack, because it was just kind of interesting to feel like, to realize, I didn't really think I can't do these things, but I could feel that, like, that had to have had an impact, that had to have had an impact on my confidence, or, or my ability, well, not just my ability, but my confidence to be able to achieve things. It's like,
Just that belief. You had that little inkling of a belief.
yes. Yeah. This belief that just said, oh, that there was this limit to my abilities, but I was going to be limited in my abilities. I can't tell you how, when I said that, I'm like, yes, I can, and that, so it's like everything, if I pushed past that, it was like a big deal instead of just my innate ability. Does that make sense?
Right.
Like, it felt like, oh, if everything I've done that's big is like a huge accomplishment. And it is, but at the same time, like, I can do it. I'm not limited, right? Anyway, I think, yeah, I think at the beginning of the book, if you don't know what an upper limit problem is, it's really close to the beginning. He asks you 4 questions, and then you'll know. You'll feel the upper limit problem. And these questions are, and he's talking about moving into, and we'll talk about those. I want to talk about those zones in a minute after this, those zones, but he asks these questions about, like, he's kind of says, okay, we're going to move. Here's this kind of the background. Here's where we're going to move forward. So if you want to move forward, you're going to ask yourself these 4 questions. And we were driving in the car this time, listening, and you just feel like the sweat on the back of your back, like, what? So here's the questions. Am I willing to increase the amount of time every day that I feel good inside? And it's one thing to be like, sure. You know what I mean? But when you're really listening to that, it's like, oh, for me, at least, it's like, well, but what if I'm sick one day? Like, what if I didn't sleep well? You all of a sudden come up with these excuses why you wouldn't, like, I wouldn't make a promise that I would feel good every day, but it's like, there it is. There's your limit, the idea, because we're just saying, would you want to? But again, my upper limits come in and want to, give excuses, right? Give excuses. That's it.
I know. I would give the excuse of, like, what if someone was mean to me? Those are
Yes.
the thing.
Yes. The second question, am I willing to increase the amount of time that my whole life goes well?
This has been something that I've been really talking to my kids about of like, well, let's just imagine it was a silly thing about like a white elephant gift or something like, well, I'm probably going to get the worst one. And I thought to them, like, what if you got the best one? Like, 'cause let's just practice. Like,
Right.
it might not turn out. I'm okay with that. But like, let's just say, like, maybe you'll get the best one.
Because the odds are the same. The
Yeah,
odds are exactly the same.
right.
And that's where, to me, that's a perfect example of those under beliefs, because and like I say, I don't know if it's, I think it's like you say generational or cultural, because it's like I better not want the best, or or I'll be disappointed if I don't get the best. And it's really subtle, right? It's like really subtle in there, but it's like, because honestly, I mean, and I could speak for myself. I've said things like that. And at the really core, what I really want is to be wrong, is to be like, I'm putting my standard low so that I won't be disappointed. You know what I mean? And I think it's because, yeah, I
No,
think,
go ahead.
I think it's because we put our value so much on that outside world, because if I got the big thing, it would mean I'm worth da 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 da. It's like we tie it to things, or if this happens, then I'm okay of a person, you
It's
know?
tied to worthiness, exactly like what
Yes.
you. And so, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel that like I'm not worthy for that, or I hope I'm worthy. I hope there's some proof that I'm worthy because I don't
Right.
believe.
Yeah. It's like someone or something else has to is giving me that validation.
Yep.
And he touches on that in the book, which I think is, I was really toward the end of the book. And he shared a little bit of that experience in the podcast when we interviewed him. So make sure you listen to that podcast. The third question is, am I willing to feel good and have my life go well all the time? And again, when I heard that question, it's like, well, of course, like who wouldn't, but there it is. It's like, but if I say I can have my life go well all the time. Imagine if you were in, just kind of like you were the second time you read that book, you were in that frequency, but the first time you were not. So let's say you answer that question, you're like, whatever. There is a possibility that you could move into this frequency where that just feels normal.
Yeah, true.
And I think that's what this book is trying to reiterate, is like, how do we get so that we can, first of all, you got to experience it once at least, to even understand it. And that's why even in these questions, you kind of got to feel where you're not it. Like, when you ask these questions, it's like, no way, I can't be happy every minute,
That's so fascinating because I remember him talking in the book about just sitting down and practicing feeling happy on the inside. Do you remember that part, or something about like excitement or something? He's like, just feel good in your heart and just so you know what it feels like get really quiet and feel that happiness. And I thought that's brilliant. That's a little woo, but
Totally.
beautiful.
But it is, because the experience is literally the sensations in our body.
Yeah.
Like if you're watching a funny movie, you're not having that tense feeling that you do when you're watching a scary movie.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling is the everything. The feeling is everything. And we're good at being able to replicate those feelings inside our body. And that's what I think he's saying, is he's just saying, let's do that more often.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be able to get to that whenever we want. And then once we know how to get there, then we'll just use that little journey as much as possible.
Right.
As much as possible. And so the last question, are you willing to take the big leap to your ultimate level of success in love, money, and creative contribution?
Wow.
Yeah. So those questions, yeah, just at the beginning of the book, let you, that is the beginning of where he wants to take you. Those are big questions.
Those are big questions. Yeah. It reminded me of, like, he talks about a Russian doll when you're trying to find your zone of genius and stuff like that. And so when I've been doing EMDR with my therapist, there's a script that they use. Are you there? Oh, there you are. And when you bring something up, the thing that the therapist is supposed to say is go with that, recognize that and go with that. And so I think when you're asking some of these questions, when you answer one, like I say, okay, go with that. Let's go a little deeper. And using that to kind of further your exploration into some of these questions, because I think it'll take you to a place. Maybe you didn't start out thinking that you were going to go. And
Hmm.
sometimes we do have to dig a little deeper and peel those layers off to really figure out why maybe we don't want to, really why we wouldn't want to feel good every day.
Right. Yeah. And he does bring up that Russian doll. He says it says the layers of so it's like for me, that little inkling of like, hey, having my mom have all those thoughts and dealing with that while I'm in her womb might have had some issues for me. And it's like, and then later it's going to be like, oh my gosh, that's why I didn't do that. And then maybe a little while later, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, that stopped me in that situation. And it's like layers and layers of that same thing that kind of comes up, and you peel back all of that fact, that all of the ways that that thought or that idea or that belief has affected me. So yeah, he talks about that. So he talks about the zones. So he talks, and I thought this was so, again, familiar but new, like that you have a zone of incompetence. There are things you're just not good at, right? Like you're not good at things. We all are. We have our zone of incompetence. We have our zone of competence, things that we can do. We can do. And then we have our zone of excellence, which these are tasks that you're good at, but they don't align with this your natural passions and abilities. This place inside you that can just, I think, just kind of sing as you're working is what he kind of talks about. And then of course that singing is called your zone of genius. It's tasks that use your unique talents, passions, and strengths and bring you a deep sense of joy and fulfillment. Now, if you that is belief number one, that your work should be bring you joy and a sense of fulfillment. That's like the idea that we have with the word work is not joy and fulfillment in society. We do, it's like, oh, that was hard. Work is always the opposite of that. It's like
Toil
effort.
and pain. And
Yes. And so did you think by the end of the book you could, did you was it possible? Did you feel like that living in more of your zone of genius was possible?
I think it's possible.
Yes.
It's interesting because like when he talked about his zone of genius, it was like in helping people figure out solutions to their problems. Wasn't that
I think that's right.
something similar to that along those lines? And it's not like you can go to college for that. I mean, you
Right.
can find careers that you can do that in, but some of these things, like I think it leads you to a place of like, okay, how can I do that maybe where I'm at right now? Which was really interesting because I talked to Michelle about this, about the job I'm at right now. And I work at a credit union, and counting out money and keeping things straight. I know. I don't think it's bordering on incompetence sometimes, I'll be honest. And so I was kind of fretting a little bit of like, should I quit? What should I do? And and your advice was, maybe this is either a means to an end, or maybe you can find ways to use your genius in that job. And so I've been practicing that. And I talked to even my coworkers and I said, listen, I've realized that my zone of genius is not counting money back. I said, it stresses me out. I worry about it. I said, my zone of genius is making a connection with the people that come in here. And I was like, I can remember that they had their family Christmas party and that they served their grandma's recipe of Spanish rice because they knew the kids were going to eat it. And I can bring that up and I can have this connection with these people. And it's not necessarily even that I'm like doing anything for them. Like I'm not counseling them or anything, but I don't know. And I don't know how to use that anywhere else right now in my life. But once I started focusing on that, the counting the money got so much easier and I didn't worry about it. I noticed that the other day and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go with that. And wherever this takes me, I don't know. And maybe this is just a lesson for me to learn for now. But what a change that made for me. I mean, it was nobody else would notice it probably, but I did.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think it's what's kind of almost a difficult thing is the zone of genius is that thing that's effortless almost, so it's like, well, how do you do that? How do you do that, Shalene? How do you remember everybody's Christmas parties? And you're like, I don't know. Because it's your unique talent, your strength, and it brings you a sense of joy and fulfillment.
Yeah, for sure. It really does.
Yep. There's your zone of genius. It's connection. You connect people. When people feel seen and heard, that's it. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. And in fact, I thought of another upper limit issue I had a few years ago. So when I was little, um, my sister started playing the violin, and there was this singing group in the town that had these big fluffy dresses with the big like slips, and all the neighborhood. It's like the lady that owned it lived in our neighborhood, and everybody wanted to go. And then they started doing clogging later on, like, and I was like, I want that dress, first of all. And I want to see, I want to do those singing. And it was funny because like my siblings would bring me in and they'd give me a hairbrush and say, will you sing for my, because I was this little extra kid at the end of this. So they would have these my siblings were like teenagers and like have their friends like, Michelle, come here, sing them that song, like that puppy love, like, and they called it puppy love. And I would, I mean, that's hilarious, right? Like hilarious. So I wanted to sing. I wanted to sing.
Yeah.
And but but my mom kind of wanted me to play the violin, and I was like 4 or 5 years old. I was young, and we were at this music thing for my sister, and my mom introduced me to like the violin teacher, hi, see, this is her, and she's so nice. Don't you think you want to play the violin? And when I drop into that scene, I completely know that I said, I know that I chose for my mom. I said,
Oh.
okay. Yeah. And I remember doing this little like pretending like I was playing and said, okay, and made it kind of funny, but I knew that I was choosing this violin and not the singing. Right. So there's choice number one that made a difference in my life. Skip through about 15, 16, I was taking, there was this lady, she's like one of my beautiful mentors. Her name was Julie, and she was an actress, and she was a dancer. And so she had in her little home, she would do acting classes, modeling acting classes, and then dance classes. And so I was taking these modeling classes from her. I did it for 2 years. And we had all sorts of different things, how to do a headshot, how to read a script, and what she was so instrumental at that time, because one of the things she helped me to do was the fact that when you go when you go for like to try out for a part, in a commercial or something, she would say, they just want who they want, and they will say, no, you're just not pretty enough, or no, and she's like, it's not about who you are. It's just about what they want. And she would just drill into us this idea that, get used to it. They're going to be mean. It's not about you. It's not about you. And it was at such an influential time. I think it really impacted me because I did learn to be like, not really insecure about myself. It was just, I remember this one time she was like, so sometimes our heads are big and sometimes our heads are small. And so we use like hair or we use makeup to kind of give ourselves balance on screen, right? Because I don't know if you've ever run into like a lot of famous people have huge heads.
Oh.
And it makes their body look tiny. Maybe it's like they're different in real life than they are on the screen. It's totally different. Anyway, and she went around the room and she's like, so, you got to know your head so that we can da 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 da. And she was like, okay, fat head, pinhead, fat head, just went around the room. And it sounds so mean, but it was really, we were all just like, oh, okay, now I know what to do. It wasn't judgmental or mean at all.
Jeez, I think everyone could take a little class from her. That's amazing.
Right. It was huge at that time. So I was going to class and all this stuff. And so I thought maybe I was going to try doing a pageant. I was going to try doing a pageant. And I have one of my sisters was dropping me off at class one day, and honestly, I think what was going on is her upper limit, right? Her upper limit's getting hit because I'm doing this modeling, it sounds so fancy, acting kind of class. And I was like, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do this, pageant. And she's like, but what would you do for a talent? And I was like, well, I think I would sing. Because I'm like, I thought the thing is about one of those pageants, they're not singers. They sing a song. You know what I mean? Like you learn one song well. And I understood that, but she was like, I know, but all those other girls have just been singing their whole lives. And I'm telling you, I remember right where I was on the road when she said that, and the sinking feeling, it impacted me. So that was wound number 2. Then, so years later, I'm married. I think I have all my kids, and I decide I get invited to sing at this thing, at this like little Christmas part, like a Christmas thing with like 2 or 3 other people, and we practice. And I was so like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. This is, and I was so hyped up in my body about what, not wanting to do this, but like trying to prove something, trying to prove that I could do it. All these feelings involved. And 2 days before, I completely lost my voice. Completely lost my voice. I couldn't even, I swear I haven't lost my voice like that for the rest of my life. And I had sore throats all growing up. I could not even squeak. And I was so disappointed. And you know what I did is I felt punished. I felt like, why would you do this to me? Why I wanted to do this and da, 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 da. But reading this book, I realized that part of the thing that needed to happen, because of these, again, these choices I made and this wound that I had, and all of those, I had so much tied up in singing that needed to be healed. Like that part of me needed to be seen and heard that it was hurt. Does that make sense?
I think so.
And I think that's why, it's like when these upper limits show up, to really kind of think of them as needing healing rather than I just need to think differently. You know what I mean? What's wrong with me? Like I can do it. Come on. And sometimes that's helpful to like pump yourself up. But I was really wanting to sing. I wasn't being forced to. It was like this singing was going to make up for all those other singing. And that's not how it works. So
yeah, you're saying that, so like, it's not just trying to change this belief. It's like really peeling it back and discovering what needs to be healed so that belief can change.
Yes. Right.
But
There's a healing.
So much sense, because I'm like, you just want to think it away. You just want to, I can change my mind.
Right.
But it's deeper. Wow.
Right. And it's deeper because like even going back to the presence, like it's really not that they want, I'll probably get the lowest. They say that we'll probably get the worst present. Like we say that because we don't give ourselves, we don't allow ourselves this bigness to say, I want the best. We judge it.
Yeah.
We judge it. When who doesn't want the best present?
Right.
Right. Who doesn't want the best present? So the layer is first of all, hey, I'm actually saying I'm actually like creating that that I have a better chance of having the worst one because I'm speaking it out and believing that I will get the worst one. That's layer number 1. Then the deeper layer is I really want the best present.
Mm-hmm.
And then the layer underneath that is, and nothing's wrong with that.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
He brings up these 4, what he calls the 4 fatal flaws. And we talked a little bit about these in the interview with Gay. And these 2, when he names these, you're just kind of like, what? I don't know about you. You're like, don't look at me, don't see me, But the first one, which is this one was heartbreaking to me because in training with child development, this is one of the low level under the age of 3 results is this fatal flaw. These 4 fatal flaws. The first one is feeling fundamentally flawed. Like just, and again, it's like in your mind, you're like, I know I'm not, so that's another way you can find your kind of those upper liberties and beliefs is like something will come in and you're like, and you talk yourself out of it. No, I'm this, but that initial thought is the one running the system because
Right.
you're talking it out of that. So it believes that initial one. So like, oh, I'm fundamentally flawed. To me, too, that one runs in the system. That one's cellular. That one is deep. It's not even a process. It is just people like just feel it in their soul and their nervous system. As something's wrong with me.
Oh, that's fascinating. And I believe that is the Enneagram 4's core fear, is that something's fundamentally wrong with you. And so I wonder if some of these things are harder, or that is harder to overcome for Enneagram.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I thought, oh yeah, I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. When I interviewed Janice Webb, and I can put the link in the show notes. She has that book, CEN, Childhood Emotional Neglect, and that's one of the number one signs of childhood emotional neglect, as well as maybe an Enneagram, is that feeling that something's wrong. Something's just wrong. It just feels like you're trying to prove yourself, or if I can get somewhere, then, like there's just that feeling of never, like not enoughness. So I think that's common. And then the second fatal flaw is disloyalty and abandonment, a belief that if I succeed, I will be disloyal to my roots, or my success will alienate me from those I care about. This one resonated with me.
Really?
Yeah, this one's like, yeah, it's like I want to take everybody with me, it's like, let's all go expand and grow and change the world together, and yet I need to understand that might not be someone else's zone of genius, that might not be even their desire. But I really want, connection is one of my values. And that feels like I don't want to do anything to disconnect, so that's one that's difficult for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like when we were talking about like the poverty cycle, I definitely can see that, you know, with that if I succeed, then my mom will be jealous, or she'll be, won't connect with me anymore. So
right.
Even when you're talking about your sister and the singing, like you didn't want to be disloyal to her. So you're like, I guess I shouldn't.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the worst thing I could have done is done well and won the pageant. You know what I mean? I mean, that would have I just, and so I wasn't going to go there, like it was because she brought that out. Anyway, the third one was believing that success brings a bigger burden. And this one was something that my husband, when we were first married and dating, that he had to deal with. And the funny thing was, he kind of had this idea that if like you're too showy if you buy anything not from like a thrift store, or you don't want to show off like this thing. And I remember before we were married one day, there was like this bakery that kind of went crazy. It was just brand new, and it was like you would go and get a big nice warm bread, and they had these yummy cookies, and it was like this modern kind of a bakery, and the bread was so good. And we were sitting there eating one time, and he was like, I kind of want this bread, because it was expensive back, it was like the 90s, and it was like $5 or $6 a loaf, like it was compared to what you could get at the store. It was a huge amount, and it kind of just flipped a switch in him where, and I think it's still there a little bit, but he was like, I kind of want this bread. And so maybe that's not, and it just kind of could rethink he could have nice things, right? That he could have nice things, that not be having nice things didn't mean that you were mean, stuck up, ungrateful, better than somebody. Yeah. Those kind of things. And then the last one of the last fatal flaw is the fear of outshining, a belief that if I shine too brightly, I make others feel bad and uncomfortable. I felt like this was kind of, I could identify with this one a little bit too. Just, that I've had those throughout my life. Like, yeah, that one resonates. I can feel.
I think that, well, I'm not sure, but I feel like as a woman, sometimes I feel more like I need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of take care of everybody else's feelings rather than my own sometimes.
Yep. Yeah. And then there we go with the 2 Enneagram. I mean, you're helping other people. You don't help yourself, like, you help other people shine, as kind of a little bit of the 2 Enneagram that I have. One thing I wanted to point out is when we were interviewing Gay, we had to pause for a second. I don't remember, or maybe he just
said it right out of the blue.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, he was like, "You guys, your teeth is gorgeous. Your guys' teeth. What dentist did you go to?" And we were like, "What?" And I said, I was like, "Oh, well, you should see the rest of my teeth, like, because I have, like, I don't know if I have a single unfilled tooth, or whatever in the back of my mouth. I don't know." And like then like immediately, like 2 minutes later, I wanted to go back and say, I heard that, I saw it. I wish there's my upper limit. Like, because that's one of the things that he talks about, is not like just to take a compliment. Take a compliment, he talks about. And that's something I've really tried to work on. And it's hard because just to say thank you in silence, sometimes it's like we just don't have that rhythm quite down yet in our society. It's more like, thank you. And then
Well, and I would say sometimes, and when I give a compliment, I want someone to be self-deprecating so I don't feel bad about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when someone takes a compliment, then it's like, oh, like you really like yourself? Oh no. I don't know. So it goes both ways. Like when you're giving one, I hope that you really believe that and you want them to feel that on the inside too, not just make yourself feel better.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Myself.
Totally. Yes. Speaking of myself. Well, there's a couple things that came up as we were kind of reading this book and stuff. And one of them was going to the Wicked. I've been to Wicked twice. I've seen it twice now. And watching that show, we went to New York and saw it on Broadway, and it was great. But it was interesting how much more I could get from the movie. I think because the sets are so elaborate, and that you could kind of follow a little better what was happening. And it's been a year since I've seen it.
Well, and they can put a little bit more nuanced symbolism, I believe, in there.
I think so too. I think you're right. Like they could explicitly say it because they had a little bit more, or they could zoom in on something, where in a play you can't.
Yeah.
And so I was really surprised at how much more I learned in the movie about the story, than I had previously thought. And so if spoiler alert, don't listen. Trust me, like see it first. Unless you've seen the play, you'll know. But so the story is that she's this what is her name? Elizabeth? Elphaba, yeah. Elphaba is this little girl, and they show her when she's little, but she's green, right? You know the Wicked Witch of the West. She's this green person, and you don't think about it when you watch Wizard of Oz, but there was really no other green people in the Wizard of Oz. Like she's green. Right. We never know why. We don't know what's going on, but you recognize in the movie and in the play that's a wound for her. It's difficult. It makes her different, and she's had to put up so many kinds of walls. And at the beginning of the movie, how they could just be mean to her, and she just doesn't let it faze her. It seems to on the outside.
Well, but do you know what I don't remember this from the musical, but the bear that took care of her nurse or whatever, she had someone that loved her. Like, to me, that was so special. Like, it wasn't her parents. They couldn't hold it for her. But that bear, I don't know, it was really touching to me that she was like, it's going to be okay. And I think that gave her the courage to kind of do what she did later on. Because if she hadn't had anybody on her side, she couldn't have done it.
You're right. You're right. You're totally right. You're right. But her dream is to go to the wizard and get her green skin taken away. Like she wants to be like everyone else. And I mean, and they don't say this, but she's got coming up on almost a couple decades of that wish, right? Of wanting to be the same as everyone else. Which again, I understand, like that one upper limit. It's like, let's all go together. Like I want to be that sameness is really, it's really tender for me. So I identified with that with her. She just wanted to be. And there's a song in there that she, when she's so excited that she might have the opportunity someday to meet him, it's like, oh my gosh, like all my dreams,
Well, and
everything
she
I
wants
want.
to prove that she's worthy of being here. Like she just wants to
Yes.
be worthy. And I was like, I feel that. Like that resonated with me. Like you just want proof that you're worthy of being here. So if she had different color skin, then it proved. Or if she
Yes.
had a power that was special, like it proved that she was good enough.
Yep. Yes. And then at the end, it was, again, I'm reading this book and watching it. And of course, the song we all can sing that it's time I defy gravity, right? Well, what is defying gravity? It is the big leap. And her defying gravity was defying, to me, it wasn't necessarily everyone else. It was it was her own belief about her worth, her value, her gifts. Because the whole time she's like, oh, they're not, it's not a gift. My gifts are not gifts. They're inconvenient. She was not
They hurt
proud of.
people, right? They
hurt
cause destruction or whatever.
Yes, which was her belief meant that so. Because like when she used her belief, when she used her gift when she was little, she was protecting her little sister.
Right.
She was using it for good. Yeah, it hurt people, but she was protecting someone.
True.
It's time I defy gravity. That song.
And you said like when she sees her younger self.
Yeah, so what does she do? She literally takes the leap. She gets the broom, she leaps off the building and she falls. She falls, and the whole time that she's falling, she sees this younger version of her. And she sees that younger version of her with value. And with love and admiration and like power. And there's just this moment, it's just eye to eye contact. But I feel like that's what you do in a healing journey.
Yes.
Is that fall. You jump off a cliff, you jump off. I mean, it feels like you're falling. And then you look at that little version of you, that inner child, that small version of you, and you see her. Like I had to go see that little 5-year-old. It's like it sat in the back of my mind, but I had to go see that 4 or 5-year-old that decided I was going to be more connected to my mom than to myself, and choose my violin over my singing. And when I saw her and I recognized how she wanted to be part of she wanted to be accepted. I mean, not that my mom would have rejected me, but I wanted to make her happy. I didn't want to have the difficult conversation. First and foremost, I didn't want to say, no, I don't like it. Because I thought think about that, how deep that runs. I was thinking that if I did what was good for me, I was being mean to my mom.
Right.
And that wasn't true. And I had to work with her and let her, it's like she knew it, but I had to say, yeah, we didn't have the capacity to say no. We didn't have the ability to say, hey, mom, I don't want to disappoint you, but this is more of where I feel like my genius is, or my excellence is, maybe, and I didn't have that. So it's not like it's my mom's fault. It's like this is what I think we're here to do this. This is the journey. Because I asked Gay, I said, do you think there is a way that we could raise people to not have an upper limit? And I was surprised by his answer. Do you remember what he said?
Like if there is, I haven't found it yet.
Yep. Which means it's not about the fact that we're all, it's like a beautiful cycle. It's like all the wounding and all the issues. It's like they're part of the growth. It's like if I want to run a marathon, I have to do the 1 mile, the 2 mile, 3 mile, the 10 mile. You can't just skip to the end.
Well, and if they're also like, if there's no lower limit, then there's no upper limit. So you have to have both, where it is.
Totally. That's such a good point. You're so right. You're so right. So anyway, yeah, seeing defying gravity. And again, especially in our woo-woo world, the fact that she had these gifts and they weren't made special, but she was it's time I defy gravity. The words of that song, if you have any kind of gifts, listen to that song and internalize those words, because it does feel like defying gravity is jumping off the unknown. It is pushing up against that upper limit. It is taking that big leap. Totally.
Yeah, I love that.
So quickly, just at the end here, I wanted to share a video I had when I had a friend who was taking that class with me that we were told to read this book. And she was she's working, she was starting a foundation for single moms, and it really hit her, and she really took this book seriously. So she shared with me a little video of the ways that what she did to kind of move herself. And she would tell you that how much just something simple as writing down every day. I think she wrote down, "I am living in my zone of genius." She would just write it down. So I have she sent me some video.
Okay, Michelle, I am so excited for your podcast with Gay Hendricks. And so you had said, yes, you would pass forward a little message. And so I wanted to I have evidence, total evidence. Like, the dude has been such an influence in my life. Like, all of the red lines, I am like, yes, what is this about here? Hey, Stacy, live in the possibilities. What does that look like? So I found, you're going to laugh. Check this out. The dog ate my journal, but it's still so important to me, so I keep it, of course. But I started, when I read the book last year, I started reading in February. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to speed this process up. I'm going to start telling myself every day that I'm going to be living in my genius. And so I did. So as you can see, I just started, it's part of my creation journal, but I would write after my creation journal, anywhere from 9 to 10 lines, that I am living in my genius. And then I would just verify, and I would just keep doing it. You can see I love living in my genius, love living in my genius. It's all through it. Started a new notebook this year, still writing. I have been really pretty dang consistent. Last year, like every day, I was like zoning in on it. And since this last 6 months, everything has been coming together with the foundation and just increasing my ability to expand in more abundance, more success, and more love, that I'm now writing maybe once a week. And I think it's really funny because I will even write, I really do love living in it, and I would feel it, and I would love it, and I would just sit there and you know, that's not always the case with every single day that I wrote, but I could feel there was parts of it that would actually carry me from day to day when I wasn't feeling it. And then just bring it over here, look, you can see that it's tattered. And then because things were so high level and moving so quickly, that my cute little editor friend said, let's put in it gently expands, because there's been so much. And then I added in without judgment, because I started finding out that I was increasing some judgment with all of the things that I was doing. So anyway, I'm excited for you. You're going to have an amazing podcast, and I just love you. Have a great day.
I thought it was just so sweet how she, you know, that's what it takes. I feel like the big leap is really a bunch of small steps, right? It's like, it's just a bunch of small steps. And I think that first step for me, and maybe, you know, I'd love to hear what other people have to say. For me, the first step is just allowing the journey to be okay, and the point. Because sometimes I think, you know, it's like, well, it's just not supposed to be that way. Should be this way. I should have had that, or I need this in order to move forward. And that first little step is just saying, I'm here. This is where I'm at. This is my life. And like I say, there might be a lot of healing that needs to come before you can stand in that frequency of allowing what has been to be. You know, and then and you might have to go back there. You know, it's not like I'm in that zone all the time, or that anybody would be in that zone all the time. But I think that step one is just to be where you're at, you know, to recognize the truths of what's going on kind of inside. And that did hurt, you know, like I'm not mad at my sister, you know, because for a long time it was like, there was the limit. It was like, that kind of hurt. Like I knew it was there. When my mind would kind of wander, I'd be like, yeah, that moment hurt. But then immediately I'm like, but she was nice and she was this, and, you know, but I don't want to like have a conversation with her. And I don't think I necessarily do, but it was very telling how I immediately go into these justifications for her and not for my own hurt.
Mm.
And
Right.
just to say that hurt, that was hard. That caused me pain. That changed me a little bit. And she didn't mean to do it. You know what I mean? All of that can come, but
Right.
but the first needs to come first. That was painful. It affected me. It affected me in a big way.
Well, and he brings that up. We didn't touch on this little part, and I was trying to think of where it was connected to because he brought it up twice, but he said that a lot of conflicts in relationships and even as big as like conflicts with countries, that it's just this fight for victimhood, right? Or like you said that and it hurt me and then I didn't do my best or whatever. It's this fight for victimhood. Who's the bigger victim? Who the bigger victim is going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, so instead of saying that there is 100% of responsibility and you have your part and I have my part, that there's actually both of us have 100% of responsibility. So there's 200%. And so you have to accept your responsibility and deal with that. And you were just talking about that. And then she has to take hers whenever that time is for her. She has to take that responsibility. And I have situations in my life that I'm trying to look at that way and trying to figure out how it's going to work because those problems are real to me.
They're real. They're real.
And so I'm really trying to accept my responsibility in that part. And then hopefully at some point we can work through it and she can accept her responsibility in that. But I think that was really, I don't like it when people always say like, well, just don't be a victim. I'm like, sometimes you just can't help it because you want someone to see your point of view, all you want.
Right.
And
well,
so,
victim is hurt. You're hurting.
Yes.
And that's the whole point is it's like, don't be hurt. They might as well say, don't be hurt.
Yeah.
And we believe it sometimes. And we try that for a long time.
Exactly. So I think looking at situations sometimes like that and just accepting that responsibility, and then hopefully that will start to heal. However that happens. I don't know. Hopefully one day I will have a great example of it.
Right.
But I'm in the middle of it. So
yeah, the messy middle. Well, and I think, you know, it like I say, it's a step at a time and you're doing the work. You're going to therapy, you know, like every time you go, that's one step toward the big leap. It happens in steps, you know, and he doesn't talk about his, you know, it didn't come in one moment. He kind of doesn't talk too much about his particular jump, but he throws, you know, he doesn't throw names around. He does a little bit in the book. He does actually throw names around, but in real, you know, he'll say, I knew this, you know, what did he talked about in the interview, the Academy Award winner, you know, she got this person had gotten an Academy Award and still, do you think I'm good? You know, like it's never a destination. It's always the journey. It's always the journey. Right. So anyway, I'm excited for anybody's feedback on this book. And even if you had something like Shalene, where the first time you're like, this didn't do it for me. Let's talk about it. Like, that's fair. That's fair. Because what else you got going on? Something else resonates. And I would like to hear that.
Yeah, true.
So anyway, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks is our theme for January 2025. So exciting.
To thank the Wholeness Network for inviting me to share astrology insights for 2025. My name is Karen Crawford, and I am both a modern and traditional astrologer. And I'm very excited to dive into the cosmic magic in the sky because, as always, there's a lot of things going on. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I made a little slide presentation for you to enjoy. And so essentially what we're going to start with here is looking at a quick recap of 2024 because it went out with a bang. In November, we had quite the shift in the United States with the election November 5th. We had Mars at 29 degrees of Cancer, and we had Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So technically, from a traditional astrology point of view, Mars is a malefic. It's a hot and dry planet. It's associated with the god Ares, war. And Pluto is a modern planet. And Pluto is often deep, significant transformation. So basically, half the country was happy, half the country was devastated. There's a lot of polarizing things that were going on with that. Not long after that, Mercury went retrograde, and that was on November 15th. And Pluto went into Aquarius like 4 days after that, and on the 19th. And Pluto will be in Aquarius until March 8th of 2043. Like, are you doing the math in your head? Because I'm like, am I going to be around in 2043? It feels like it's so far from now. And it'll move into Pisces January 19th of 2044. So when Pluto is shifting into Aquarius, we want to look for big shifts in technology, innovation, and communication, because Aquarius is an air sign. It's forward thinking. And in astrology, we have patterns and we have rhythms to things. So oftentimes we'll look back to see what happened when something happened like that before, because I don't know anybody who's 248 years old, because that's the last time all this happened. So in the late 1700s, between 1777 and 1798, Pluto was again in Aquarius. So that's when we had the American and French revolutions, the Industrial Revolution, a lot about rights and freedoms. So I think with Pluto moving into Aquarius in our particular lifetime, it could be a lot about grassroots themes, finding and connecting with your authentic tribe. When we last had a big shift with Pluto is when it moved into Capricorn in 2008. That's when the housing market crisis happened and we kind of bailed out the banks. So definitely a financial institution feel with that Capricorn. When we're looking at Aquarius, we're thinking about forward thinking things and information. So AI is 100% on the docket. And I mean, you don't even have to like write or read anymore. You can just put something in and say, okay, make something for me about this topic. And then AI just pulls all this stuff, which I think is scary, because I think we need to really use our brain. So anyway, the internet, social media, these things can all be dramatically revolutionized, changed. And again, I think human rights is definitely a topic that's going to come back up 100%. One of the ways we can think about Pluto and Aquarius for us as people who are interested in living a spiritual, loving life is also looking at how can you help in your own community or your own neighborhood. There can also be space for both and, instead of just picking one thing or the other. So kind of holding oppositions and kind of finding a place where you can be comfortable as a human on the planet right now, to kind of move things back more towards the middle, which I think ultimately if we can all find love in our hearts, that's going to be very helpful. And so looking at December now. So December, Mars went retrograde December 6th at 6 degrees Leo, 10 minutes, and that's going to be for 79 days. So Mars will have forward motion again starting February 23rd. And Mars is going to go back as far as 17 degrees Cancer. So it's going to go back over that 29-degree Cancer it had with Pluto back in November, which might be interesting. And briefly, when we talk about retrograde, it's just an illusion because we're geocentric. Our view is from the Earth, and it looks like the planet's moving backwards, but it's really not. It's because of the difference in orbital speeds. So when we see a planet going to retrograde, it's about reviewing, it's about reflecting, it's about recalibrating. And Mars is really about how we assert our energy, how we go after what we want, our desires. So this kind of really lets us review what brings us joy in our life, what gives us passion. So we can really check in with our goals and make sure this is something that we really want. So, Mars is the action planet. And when, it's going retrograde, we might kind of feel like, I feel like the brakes being tapped versus stepping on the accelerator, which is the usual Martian feel of getting stuff done and going after your goals. And hey, if you follow me, great, but I'm not waiting for you. So this can really help us internally go in and look at our desires and what we want and what we go after, and to really make sure it's in alignment with our values. So Neptune also went direct December 7th, and then Mercury went direct on December 15th. Now, every 20 years, there is a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and the next one will be in 2040. So right now on December 20, or we just had December 24th, there's this connection between Jupiter at 14 degrees Gemini and Saturn at 14 degrees Pisces, where those two planets are going to talk to each other. We had that happen on August 19th, and that was kind of when the presidential cycle was having interesting things with President Biden stepping down and Kamala Harris running. So the last meeting of this square will be in June of 2025. So we don't always know what these outer planets will mean potentially until later, because when these transits occur, it's 2 or 3, maybe 4 times when they have a perfect aspect. And so things kind of roll out and they kind of make more sense as time goes on. And the winter solstice was December 21st. And so in the Northern Hemisphere, it's basically the longest night. And the next day, we get to welcome back the sun. So the sun's going to start moving up in its declination. It's going to become equal on the spring equinox. And then the sun will be at its highest. And that will be during the summer solstice. So moving on to January, we have, and this is to be like Aquarius with lightning touching the trees. So Venus is going to be entering Pisces on January 2nd. Venus loves the sign Pisces because it's what we consider her exaltation. So Venus represents for us what we love, magnetization, values, beauty, creativity, things like that. And so when Venus steps into Pisces, it's going to feel nice for her. She's going to have this feeling of support. And so what does that mean for you? Well, if your ascendant is Leo, I'm sorry, what am I talking about? Libra, if your ascendant is Libra or Taurus, Venus represents you by your ascendant. So this can be more significant for you. So this might be a great time for you to be creative, maybe to like listen to music that just makes you feel transported. It could be spiritual endeavors that make you feel like you're creating something of beauty in the world. And then on January 3rd, Mars is going to be opposite Pluto again. Now, this is at 1 degree Leo for Mars and then 1 degree Aquarius. So there's like, we would maybe think about like a fight or something that we're really working hard on that can be brought more out into the open. And Pluto wants us to kind of look at things in the shadows. So it's like deeper issues to help us figure out what we're afraid of. And because we had the initial one in the summer, and then we have this one kind of now, and then with November and January, I think there's a lot of things that are kind of going on in the collective about what are the things that we're fearing, and having discussions with our friends, our family, maybe even just kind of working with communities in that sense of being connected to other people. And what unites us versus what separates us. And then when we look at January 11th, the true node enters Pisces. And so that's about an 18-month time where the nodes will be in Pisces and Virgo. And so this will be an interesting shift because the Pisces North Node is kind of having us ask ourselves, maybe I'm taking myself too seriously. What is my ego holding onto so hard that I can't possibly evolve to that next step? Pisces is about this Christ-like consciousness that ultimately has deep compassion and wisdom. And when we look at the Virgo South Node, it's how am I talking to myself in my head? Have I been overly critical? I've been overly critical of the people that I spend time with. And sometimes it's potentially being too much of a servant, where you are sacrificing so much for your work that you don't see your family, or you don't have any space for joy in your life because you're putting so many hours in. So those are themes that the whole collective will start to shift into and work with, because when the nodes shift, that's when we go into the eclipse seasons, and we'll talk about that coming up as well. And we see on January 13th, we have a full moon at 23 degrees Cancer, 59 minutes. In Eastern Standard Time, it'll be around 5:26 p.m. It's interesting that Mars is still kind of in the picture. Mars will be at 27 degrees retrograde, right by the moon in Cancer. So this might kind of be a feistier full moon. Full moons are kind of about how we have illumination to things. It can be a celebration. So one of the ways you can personalize this for you in your chart is to see what houses Mars rules in your chart. So let's say Mars rules my 5th house of children and pleasure, and it's by the moon. There could be something coming up for me about my kids, or the things that I do that bring me joy, to help me navigate. And so there could be something illuminated about that I've been working with, or wanting to make progress in some way. And then January 19th, we see the sun shift into Aquarius. And I think it's interesting because January 20th is the inauguration date. So hopefully everything goes really smoothly and wonderfully with that. And then at the end of the month, we have the new moon on January 29th at 9 degrees Aquarius, 50 minutes, and that's 7:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we also have Uranus turning direct at 23 degrees Taurus, 16 minutes. And that's been 151 days that Uranus has been retrograde. And that started September 1st of 2024. So typically what happens is late summer, kind of early fall, the outer planets, including the modern planets, they tend to go retrograde. And then usually as we come more towards like the end of winter, beginning of spring, they kind of move forward motion again. So if Uranus has been sitting on your sun, it's going to kind of move out of Taurus, move into Gemini coming up here soon. So that's good. So anyway, so basically this is just a recap of 2024, looking into 2025. And I feel like the Mars Pluto thing is really significant. And I think there's this push for people to kind of find their own equilibrium, and for us all to kind of face the shadows in some way, because with the nodes moving into Pisces, there's a real opportunity for people on an evolutionary astrology scale to look at it as, how can we all kind of move more into connectivity and unity. And we'll be back with February coming up here soon. So thank you for listening. I hope you have an amazing kickoff to 2025. And remember, setting an intention, I think setting between 1 and 3 intentions is always an amazing thing. And I think a really good time for that would be really, I think New Year's Day is always great, because everybody's kind of having this collective energy of, I'm going to go to the gym every year, I promise, whatever your thing is going to be. So just inviting you to use the freshness to start, because really, I mean, spring is almost here. It's the ground is resting, and we're all kind of taking this time to let things connect beneath the earth, but it's going to be here soon. So I think 2025 is going to be a very interesting year. And just even to have in your vision of maybe retrospectively looking at 2024, maybe things that really worked out well for you, maybe things you wish you could have done slightly differently, and having that because right now with Mars retrograde, it's great to think about, am I doing the things that I want to do for me because they're right for me? Or is it because I feel like there's pressure for me to do things a certain way? Or maybe there's something about your authenticity. So encouraging you to take that time just to sit down with yourself. And with the North Node in Pisces too, it's like, how do we get those insights? Well, we go within, we connect to the love that's in all of us that animates us, because spirit breathes us, my understanding, and really allowing those insights to come in and take that time to have that reflection. So anyway, I will stop sharing. And I bid you all an amazing day and month ahead. Take care.
When most people are asked what they want, they will answer, I want to be happy. But happy takes practice. And that's what the Wholeness Library is all about. So check it out free at thewholenessnetwork.com.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Would you like to hear more like this? In these times of extremes, the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network is an oasis from the daily news. Put on your earphones, drop your shoulders, take a deep breath, and explore more podcasts that offer self-care, hope, and ways to connect with your angels, mentors, and guides, all in one place. Visit MindBodySpirit.fm, a collective voice for good.
Coming up with a name for a podcast is tough. I'm Diane Ray, and when I wanted to launch a podcast to continue the conversations I was having on Hay House Radio and Unity Online Radio about spirituality, metaphysics, paranormal, mediumship, and more, I was convinced all the good names were taken. Then I remembered something Louise Hay used to say, the point of power is always in the present moment. So that's what I took for inspiration. I hope you can be present with me for these conversations on the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network and wherever you get your podcasts.